that you select a handful of items, let's for argument's sake, say beans. And then you play with your friends and you select a handful and your friend says you're holding odd numbers or even numbers. And if he's correct, he wins. If he's not correct, you lose. So
okay.
that's in essence, that's what that game is referring to. And we have a different name for it in Farsi. If you say Golopushki was, we play is the same game. Anyway, here is the odd and the even is metaphorically used to refer to foe and to friend, in my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So what it says in here that secrets you can't tell even to your friends because they may end up being your foe. You don't know what you're going to get. You may get odd, you may get even, and you don't always get odd or you don't always get even. So be careful, in other words. And then he admonishes us to stay clear of those three things. Don't share those with your, even with your friends. Your wealth, your beliefs. Well, here is translated into religion, but it's not really religion. Is your belief system that is talking about to keep it to yourself and your wealth because you don't know who's going to be mischievously after it. And the way you're going about your business.
Let me just make a correction on this. A religion is also considered, because back then, if you know, I mean, throughout history, there's been religious persecutions. So, I mean, he's actually referring directly to those. I mean, even perhaps religious persecution of different sects of Islam, or it had happened between, someone who was perhaps a Jewish versus Christian versus Muslim. So it is also referring to that. I just want to make sure that is
right. No, what I'm talking about is application to today's society.
Okay.
And it's not only limited to those days. Today's also there are a lot of
today also it's the same thing. I mean, sometimes I cannot. These days, being a Muslim is not really in fashion.
Right.
I'm gonna be very clear very direct about it. You
or
guys all
Yazidi
know
in ISIS territory.
I don't want to take away. So Rasul, don't forget your trail of thought. It's just that I've been commenting on a post by a ex CNN anchor Rudy Bakhtiar, which again it's she posts something from Biden quoting Prophet Muhammad, and in there she's insinuating that Biden has been kind of appealing to Muslim votes. And of course, then there is a series of, negative comments underneath. And it is a sad scene when you look at that because, I responded, and my response also was extremely negatively received. I mean, people were not happy. I'm like, fine, it is what it is. So, it is definitely religious views too. Go ahead.
So, and if you want to talk about that kind of a atmosphere, when I first came to this country in 77, 78, it was a point of pride to let other people know you were from Iran. They would be gathering around you and asking you questions and, be very friendly.
Until we took hostages.
There you go. and now you go out of your way to say you're Italian or you're something instead of saying, anyway, so let's not change the subject. And then the last thing that I got out of this, that the secret is no more a secret if you tell it to two people. So if you don't want your secrets to get out, keep it to yourself.
Okay, very good.
That's my Cliff's Note version.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other points that you guys remember?
Unless you want the story of the rabbit. Not the point, but just the literally what happened.
Sure. So
Yeah, I guess when it was turn for rabbit to go and introduce himself to lion, rabbit start, lecturing everybody that we have to change the past and have some tricks. And of course, nobody wanted to hear that because, the agreement was, no complaining and just following the order. So anyhow, he, I guess, succeeded in, convincing the others that, just leave me alone, let me do my tricks. And he goes to lion, of course, tardy. And when he get closer, he start running to have some kind of showing him some excitement and tell him the story of the fake story that he made, that, yeah, it was the lion wanted to eat me. I told him I do not know, I'm a food of the other lion. And anyhow, that was the story that, we all heard it.
okay, very good. So real quick, what is it that Rumi is trying to tell us as far as exemplifying a rabbit versus a lion?
Rabbit is very tiny
Uh-huh.
with a lot of power.
I guess,
So okay, hold on. No. Anna spoke, so we gotta talk to Anna. Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay.
Sometimes I'm very confused, but I feel like the rabbit compared with the lion is a small animal. So I guess the rabbit have confidence.
So he has wisdom in this case,
Yeah,
right?
little brain, but have a lot of, I guess.
Very nice. Okay. That's awesome. Okay, good. I'm excited now. Okay, good.
No, I don't talk too much, but I follow the class, and I'm very happy to be in this class. But
I'm glad that
it's not an easy class.
We heard you, so I'm really happy. Okay. So then the other part that I think that another thing that I think I just want to go through some of the lines that we have put together. Is excuses like, from those who feign being ill, they'll suffer from a sickness that can kill. Saying you're sick is in jest. The prophet said, we'll bring you an illness that will leave you dead. Fate ties up broken bones to heal the pain and joins together every broken vein. So one of the things that, Rumi also, in essence is trying to say is that our mind, how powerful it is that, you can keep telling yourself that I'm sick. And the more you say it, the sicker you're going to feel. Or you can keep telling yourself that, no, I'm actually pretty good. And you can actually, that has an effect on your body and as well as your soul. So those are the two things that, wanted to, point out. And then this is we talked about the position and the greatness that Prophet Muhammad had experienced because he was able to travel through the heavens, even beyond Gabriel, or angel Gabriel could not follow him after the seventh one. And he had one of the things that Rumi is referring to here is that he was now born for faith demand he'd faced. He followed orders first. I'm sorry. So he was talking about his buraq. So the fact that the Prophet Muhammad had he was able to actually utilize something that it was something that he not only deserved, but then this is, how tools and um, God-given strength would come through in order to actually elevate you to the position that you need to go. And he also, so these are, what else did we, let me also look at my Farsi notes. Just want to make sure. Another thing that he was, as Anna said, one of the things that, Rumi is referring to is the fact that if you remember, he was talking about that there is, if you look at a painting, the painting looks like a human being, but what it lacks is the soul. And because it doesn't have a soul, then that face or whatever that painting is does not really, it's something that cannot necessarily reach its highest level of greatness and consciousness. And another also point that he also told us is, was right here. I just want to, sorry. I think he went after the people who believe in, he did go after them, the folks who believe in, what do you call it? Trust versus choice. If you remember, and he also had some words for that, if I'm not mistaken. He basically came back and said, if the way he gave, he tried to tell people that do not, those who actually go after excuses. So excuses like from those who, from being ill, they suffer from sickness, and that can kill. So basically, these lines also refer to the difference between those who are going after their own destiny themselves, and they try until if you recall, it said that one, let me backtrack a little bit. The ones who try in order to create and find their own path, he likes those kinds, because they're the ones who actually take everything, the matter in their own hand, and they utilize what God has given them. But in this path, he also said that they might fall down and they might break their leg, that if they break their leg, then they will be given something so that they could actually carry on further. So that was that. And what else? That's it. So I think we got to this, because another point that Rumi is now trying to tell us is that the more we expand our vision, and the more we actually span this vision of ourselves, through opening our hearts, the better we can see the world, and the better we can realize our position, and the better we can actually start realizing both our greatness and our weaknesses, and we can make better judgments, and we can be more content with how things happen and all that. So he's trying to give us all of this at the same time. He gives us an example here, and the example is like regarding a fly, magas, in a sense, just the stuff that goes on your exposed candies. So a fly in donkey's urine perched on a straw, just like a boatman gazing at the shore. Said, straw and urine on my boat in sea. That's what the, you know, what's his name? The fly is saying. So the straw and the urine on my boat and sea, I've contemplated this fact recently. So basically, he's like, I've been thinking about it. I mean, so he's so small, he doesn't realize what is being, how he's being surrounded by all this stuff, which are, you know, worthless. And he even comes back and says, I've contemplated this fact. So he's like, I've thought about this. I'm not just saying it. I've kind of achieved this. And, you know, this kind of reminds us of some people these days. I mean, nowadays people have thought about a lot of stuff and they have arrived at certain decisions and all that. I'm in the sea, the captain on my boat. Nice. I'm in the sea, the captain on my boat, following maps and methods learned by rote. So basically saying that, you know, I am as good as any other, you know, any other person who has been trying to navigate a boat. That's where I am. In urine, it would steer its straw-made raft as if in boundless seas, for it was draft. For it was daft. So basically saying that, yeah, you know, because his vision is so limited to that little puddle, he feels that, you know, he's navigating the sea. As if in it thought a single drop could stretch so far, unable to observe things as they are. So basically, this is how, of course, because that's how he sees, that's how his vision is. He basically, that's his world is so limited. And it is world stretched out as far as it could view. Small eyes count as a sea, a drop or two. Now, it is the small eyes that he's talking about. This is not necessarily a fly. We could be small-eyed. We could be, you know, ignorant about our surroundings. We could be ignorant about our world. And we could be ignorant about the universe. And also we could be ignorant about God. So it is how much we are willing to expand our vision and our wisdom. And again, you know, this goes back to that whole explanation as to, you know, he's trying to say that your vision and your wisdom and your understanding of this universe is not something that's bounded by your body. Narrow interpreters are like this fly. With straw and urine, they all falsify. So now he's talking about people who are narrow interpreters. Narrow interpreters are, again, you know, these days, even to this day, we do have narrow interpreters. These are people who, you know, could completely, you know, falsify information or falsify facts, and they feed it to others. And that's basically them. They see their universe as a, you know, puddle of urine, that they are the ones who are navigating in it. And that's it. That's all there is. If you stop, yeah.
Is that the interpreter the right translation of the actual Farsi word, do you know?
No, so in this case, it's, you know, he's talking about sahib ta'wil batil. And so what he's referring to in there is that, you know, it has more religious connotation towards people who have falsely understood a certain religious philosophy, and then they are basically kind of, replicating that through. Ta'wil kardan is as if, you're about to falsify something. Well, it's interpretation, but it's not necessarily the right interpretation.
I mean, you can see a lot of those in Risaleh, or in interpretation of those who kind of call themselves scholars. So yeah, I can see what it says exactly.
So I had a hard time comprehending this translation and the Farsi, to be honest with you. But the way that I read and I understood is trying to say in here with these verses that we read so far, it's talking about people that they give a very eloquent speech with really big, beautiful words that they mesmerize you. But if you engage them, there is nothing behind that speech.
Sure. And again, that speech comes from their, understanding of they fully engage and they fully believe in what they say. That's what he's trying to say. So these guys, you're right, they're always mesmerized. They're always people, people get mesmerized by them because, to them, it's somebody who is telling the truth from their heart. Of course, people are not quite visionary to actually see what's coming from the heart or not.
Right.
Where is the source of the truth? Or people hardly even challenge the truth.
Yeah.
And that's that. You're right. That all has to do with it too. Normally, if folks like this they're not quiet for sure. They are very outspoken. Yeah. So if you stop reading from your own small view, the phoenix will grant kingdoms then to you. So he's saying that if you can, get your, if you get to change and switch your view, it is possible that your view, because it's so, how should I say it? Your view is so much entangled with a fly's view, it can eventually interpret it. You can again get out of this limitation that you have bound yourself to, and perhaps bring yourself up to a phoenix vision. And phoenix is if I were to translate it, it is it's basically a symbolism out of Farsi language, which is a bird who basically soars high, and it has got itself into a very, very elegant spot in the skies. It is not Simor, it's Homa, basically. That's what the literal translation is. So for those of you who may have seen Iran Air, this is Homa, basically the symbol of phoenix, which is on the tail of this aircraft. And on any of you guys who have traveled to Iran and have been to the southern part of Iran, the Persepolis, it has got a lot of these symbolism as well. So you see a lot of these symbols in Persepolis. So it's a bird, again, a bird symbol in a sense that it kind of, talks about, greatness and a holistic vision and a whole vision of the entire universe, because of the fact that it can, fly so high. Still, those who work this out aren't really flies. Spirits don't correspond to body size. So all of this, then, he comes back and he's telling us that basically all of this is something that are not necessarily, people who realize this and have gotten to this realization are not flies. They are people who have, have completely elevated themselves from their physical boundaries, and they have expanded their spiritual boundary. And because of that, they have achieved certain level of greatness. All right. Any questions? All right. So let's see. The lion. So the next part, it talks about the lion roars loudly because the hare arrives late. Now it's trying to go back to the story. Now, as you remember, the plot is basically for the lion, for the hare or the rabbit, as basically come back and said that I'm gonna basically take this guy down. So let's see how he's about to do this. There is a few points in this that, by the way, this is I'm hoping that we finish this part tonight. If we don't, because there's some parts which is going to need some, some rather lengthy explanations. So as soon as we get there, I'm sure all of us are gonna talk about it. So like that brave hare, the lion had thought tame, whose soul was not restricted by his fame. The lion roared, through my own ears my foes have blinded me. They have dealt such vicious blows. So the guy is hungry. He's got there, and he hasn't gotten there, and now he starts recalling the fact that he was kind of going back and forth with these animals. That you guys are not gonna. You cannot be trusted, and you guys are about to break your promises. So I have been bound by those fatalists, and in this case, I think I know this is a word, but I'm not quite sure why he chose this, fatalists. But again, these are the people who chose trusting into God. And trust, in this case, if you remember what we talked about, was not necessarily working for anything, just basically sitting back and allowing things to just happen, and saying that things are supposed to happen the way they're going to happen, and I don't have to do anything about it. So
that's another translation of Jap, fatalist.
I know, but again, it's so for fate. He hasn't. This is the first time he's using the word fate here, because before he used another words. If you remember, I forgot. There was another expression that he was using. But anyways, with wooden weapons too, they have taken shots. So now he's basically kind of Rumi basically is taking a shot at people who believe in fate, that these guys have wooden weapons. Their weapons are not anything that can actually withhold any sort of force or blow. No longer will I listen to their words. Their screams that from the ghouls too can be heard. Now the word ghoul is basically means giant, and in this translation, this has a connotation of Satan in a sense. So that's the word that he's trying to use here. So it says their screams that from the ghouls too can be heard. So in this case, it's saying that what they were telling me, people who believed in fate, or people who were only going to trust rather than actually work for anything, their words are like as if Satan was going to talk to me. Their words were not anything that I could have trusted. Just tear them up, O hearts, don't be led on. and skin them, for they are nothing once they're gone. And in this case, when he's talking about tear them up, he's talking about the fact that I mean, the real translation in Farsi, when you read that, the Farsi part, it says kind of, push them aside, put them aside. And he says it's trying to tell his own heart that when folks with these type of beliefs come towards you, just put them aside, and they are nothing but just what you see. So basically, he's referring to skin as something that you see visually, but Rumi always says that skin is just the cover, and what's behind the skin is what that matters. And in this case, Rumi is telling us that people who are with this type of belief, there's no substance beyond what we see from his skin on. You know what I mean? So basically, that's why he's saying, like, tear open their skin and you'll see that there's nothing there. What skin? The spacious word which lead astray, like ripples on the tide, they fade away. So basically, that was the explanation that Rumi believes that skin is just something that is just there, just like ripples on a pound. They just show up and then they fade away. So there's no substance behind them. The meanings flesh, while speech is just a shell, like form in contrast to the soul as well. So basically, he's now trying to tell us that this again, this is not a good translation, so I'm going to translate the Farsi part because this is a little kind of weird. There's a few parts that he has completely missed. So it's like, what I'm saying to you is something that's a skin. So the poem that I'm actually reciting here for you is like a skin. However, this skin has substance behind it. Find the substance, okay? And basically, what I am telling you also, so the second part, which says like form in contrast to the soul as well, this is also a bad translation. So what he's really saying is that, again, my words are like what you see as a painting or as something that has been drawn, and the meaning behind it is like the soul of that painting, or basically what I say has a soul associated with it. So there's meaning in it. Does that make sense? All right. The rotten kernels can't be seen through skin, nor good one, for skin hides its pride within. So now he generalizes a little bit about skin, or what covers us, or covers anything. Basically, anything that we see is basically covered. And he's saying that in this case, I think kernel is referring to brain. So he's basically saying that even our brain is something that's been covered by skin. And basically anything else is also covered by a protective cover. So the art of anyone who is looking at spiritual meanings or finding out anything within yourself, you need to be able to dig through the skin or dig through the surface and see what's behind it. Okay. When water is the pad and wind the pen, the words you write will soon be gone again. So let me read the next line as well, and this actually makes better sense. So when water is the pad and wind the pen, the words you write will soon be gone again. They're etched on waves if you seek constancy. You'll be dissatisfied by what you see. So basically, he's saying, when you're seeking truth, or when you're seeking meaning behind a skin, you also need to be very mindful of the fact that the meaning that you're discovering is something that is everlasting. So it's not something that is bounded by some element which is going to destroy it eventually. So that's why he's using the metaphor of, if your pen is, if your pen is wind, and your pad is water, there is no way that what you write there is going to, have a substance and it would stick around. What he is basically telling us is, again, finding out a better, if you remember, we were talking about touchstones, right? Something that actually can tell us the difference between what is made of gold and what is not. We have to start sharpening that within us so we see better and we can realize better what is giving us a true meaning of what we're seeking to find about ourselves, versus something that is deceiving us into finding things about ourselves. Does that make sense? Everybody is very quiet.
Yeah, it's hard to digest.
That's true, but I want you guys to remember. So it's basically somebody telling you, I mean, in a very, very generalized format, somebody can come and tell you, I am the way for your salvation and for you to reach heaven. And you blindly would trust that person. And another person could come back and say, no, it's you who is the way to your salvation and to heaven. And you have to find a way yourself. That's basically the difference of what it is. Most people believe the first person because of the examples that he has brought up for us so far of, like, the Jewish king and the vizier that he had, which that vizier basically went and deceived all the Christians into eventually just massacring each other, because none of them actually went into understanding what he really meant with all those different, if you remember, he wrote 12 different, set of instructions or books for them. And everybody believed them for what it was. So basically, he's trying to kind of, open this thing into us that, hey, no, you have to think through stuff. You have to find things for yourself. And the answers are coming from within you rather than somebody else giving it to you.
Mohsen?
Yes.
I'm going to give you a scenario where what you're saying is going to, because I'm a kind of person that I like to learn by memorize by association, for example. So the way that I understand this is to go dig deep for yourself. This is where I believe Hazrat Ali has an expression in Najul Balagha that says that, I may have mentioned this one time because it's my favorite, that people fall into one of three categories. They're either learned, they're donishmand, or they are learning, they're donishu, or they're a fruit fly, that they go whichever wind blows. So what this one is trying to tell you, don't be a fruit fly and go where wind takes you. Dig deep yourself and learn and find out.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah. So again, it's a very how should I say it? It's a very, very delicate meaning to, as far as these poems, because And by the way, he's about to start, as I said earlier, he's about to start a change dynamically into into the characters of this story. So the character of the lion is about to change, and we'll see that very quickly. But all right. Renounce lust breath, which fills you to the brim, and wind will bring you messages from him. Again, this is the wind is not going to bring you messages from him. This is a bad translation again. The wind, the word itself is called hava, and in this case, Rumi refers to hava as your ego. So it's like once you actually let go of your ego and you were able to block your ego, then the messages from your heart are going to start coming through. So again, he is making us realize the fact that there is a block that comes through to us from our egos. Our ego and our mind, if you remember, we talked about this. So the ego and the mind, they work together. They block messages. They are also trying to protect us, but what they try to protect is our earthly body. As a matter of fact, they basically, anything that has to do with anything that's outside of our senses, the ego is basically, and the ego and the mind kind of push that aside. And they justify it for us. One of the things that they would perhaps justify when you actually, again, talk to people, for instance, there are many people in the world that don't believe in God. And one of the first things that they say is like, I cannot see this God. Or they might come back and say that this God that you have is the God that orders killing. Or they say like, how come there are many different gods for many different religions? And Rumi has, kind of, given pointers to every single one of these guys that, hey, it is really your bad vision into these words. There's only one God. And of course, you have to get to realize yourself in order to actually see God within you and realize it. So in this case, just make a note of this, because this is actually a huge miss when it comes down to the translation. There is no wind here. He's talking about ego. So ego has to be blocked in order for the messages of the beloved to actually reach us. God's messages are always sweet and pure, because throughout they always will endure. So basically, he's now telling us that he's giving us another sign about God's messages. How do we know it? And he's like, God's messages have never changed. They don't change. They have never changed throughout time. Now he gives us an example into that. He says, while pomp of kings comes from their own desire, by God, the prophets are admitted higher. And then he's kind of comparing prophets, which are designated to prophecy by God, and kings, which most of the time they are designated kings by their, their desires and wants. And in this case, he's saying that the kings, what they say, depending on how they felt and what their desires were, their messages are always different. Whereas the messages of the prophets have always been the same. Let me take a step further into this. Even the Farsi poets like Attar, Hafez, Rumi, Ferdowsi, and others, when you look at their words are all the same. Their message is all the same. They're not different. They're not, they actually look at all of these concepts the same way. None of them are looking at it differently. So he's kind of starting to point that out. The names of kings are scrapped off coins in days, but Ahmed's name no coiner can erase. So he's like, yeah, there have been kings that, they even had their names, put on a coin, but that name was basically taken off or went away. But Prophet Muhammad's words were never taken away.
Mohsen,
Yes.
I also read another way of describing the same thing, that like in Muslim countries, when they mint a coin, they put the then current ruler's headshot on the coin. And as rulers change, those headshots change, but the message that they put on it about the, la 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 always stays regardless of who the ruler is.
Yeah. It's interesting that many currencies in the world have a kind of a biblical verse in them. Even when you look at dollar, it does say, in God we trust. And you look at other currencies in the world, it is amazing that, how things like that are. And by the way, I think between a majority of the currencies in the world, I think it's Britain and the US who have not changed. Ironically enough, I'm going to say they haven't changed the faces of their currencies. Yet most countries, and in this case, I'm going to refer to some, Muslim countries, majorities, they have, had to change a lot of faces. And that's sad. But again, it is, and it's something that, we've got to kind of get away from it. I don't know if there is a currency in the world that does not have somebody's face on it. Do you guys know of a currency that doesn't have somebody's face on it? China has got the Chinese rulers. The ruble has got, Lenin and Stalin.
Maybe ancient money.
I don't know. I mean, I think Euro does or doesn't.
Elizabeth.
How Euro looks like.
Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah. Well, no, that's British pound. And
because Euro is not
dollar.
one country, so that probably covers many countries. That's probably what doesn't have a face.
Yeah. All right.
And when there is time, at some point in time, we really need to study what's actually printed on the $1 bill. There's like about 20, 30 different messages on it. On that same $1 bill.
I know. I used to be in the.
This is the euro. I googled it. 6 different euro. All of them have some kind of picture.
No, there you go.
Not necessarily rulers, but there's some pictures on it.
Yeah. All right. So the last line is also pretty nice. He says that his name, and he's referring to Prophet Muhammad. His name contains the whole prophetic line, the way that 10 includes 1 through 9. And the reality is actually the Farsi one says 100 includes, 1 through 99 or something like that. So, but again, you guys get the point. All right. So now he goes into further explanation of the hare's stratagem. All right. So
it's a long one.
That's a long one. So you guys gear up for it. Any questions? Anything that so far we need to explain, because we need some serious, serious attention here. I don't know if we can even finish it, but
this is when the line flips then.
Yep. Line is about to flip. That's correct. So the character of the line is about to flip. That's right. All right. So his journey to the lion he delayed in order to rehearse the plans he'd made. After a while, the hare then headed near to whisper something in the lion's ear. What worlds the strength of gnosis lets you see, more vast than oceans filled with purity. Gnosis is mystical knowledge, basically. That's the word that, again, Javid has used here for the translation. However, the word that's used in Farsi is the word that refers to mind. Okay. Now, you guys have all heard me saying that Rumi most of the time tells us that our mind is this little mind, which once it actually, kind of collaborates with your ego, it prevents us from observing the mystical. Okay. So I want you guys to allow me to label that as little mind. Okay. So our mind is basically little. However, there is another mind, which Rumi refers to, and that is the big mind. So the big mind is what he refers to as God. God is what another symbolism for God is the big mind, the mind that actually possesses everything and all knowledge. Now, you remember that at the very beginning parts of Masnavi, Rumi was telling us about a pain. I mean, the whole stories that we read through Masnavi is all about a pain. And the pain is a pain of separation, right? So the separation that he's talking about is the fact that because our soul is bounded with our bodies, and it's been so much ingrained into all of this needs and desires for our bodies. Therefore, our soul is very much tied down. And since it's tied down, it cannot make that connection. And we all know that through the heart, this connection can be made so that we can actually expand our soul. Once we have a connected soul, once we are connected, let's just say that we become connected. It is as if you connect yourself to it's like for those of you who understand cloud computing, this is the best analogy. When you are only working with your own workstation, you are limited with the processing power of your workstation and your storage power of your workstation. But then when you sign up with Amazon AWS or Google Cloud or things like that, once you connect to that cloud computing, all of a sudden you have an unlimited amount of storage that you could use, an unlimited amount of processing power that you could compute. Well, granted, you have to pay for them too. They don't come free. But that's basically it. So think about the mind as this little mind once we're not connected. But once we're connected, it's as if you connect to the cloud. And all of a sudden, our little mind is also able to connect to the big mind, and it leverages that. Did I explain that? Okay. So now he says, what worlds the strength of gnosis lets you see. So he's basically trying to tell us that you have to see the worlds that exist in the big mind. At the moment, you can't see it. And then the next line, he says, more vast than oceans filled with purity. So basically saying that this ocean of this big mind is basically just vast and it's unlimited. All right. Our forms traverse this.
Just a question.
Yes.
Purity.
Yes.
Is that a dig against ritual?
No, he's basically referring to purity. Again, the word that is used in Farsi is oceans, as a matter of fact. So all he needed to say was more vast than oceans, filled with, I would say, the strength of gnosis or something. But he actually uses purity, and again, he's trying to rhyme this properly. That's why he also uses that word. The word purity doesn't necessarily go well with the Farsi version. Yeah. Okay. Our forms traverse this lovely ocean fast, like cups which on its surface have been cast. Now, basically saying that what we have is that we are like these empty cups, and we are these empty cups which are on the ocean because we're empty and we're kind of floating through it. And we're empty because we don't know much. What Rumi likes to do is he wants to actually become full of water so that he can submerge. But we are scared of that generally. So we rather actually keep in the cup empty and just float through it. Until they're full like tubs, they float on top. But once they're filled, they finally start to drop. Truth's sea is hidden. Land is on display. Our forms are waves or just the ocean spray. So basically, he's telling us that, there is a truth, or there is a sea of, truth that is completely hidden. And basically, we are floating through it, and and the ocean spray is, we just get a little bit of, of a mist splashed into our faces, and with that little bit of mist, we're all like, okay, this is good for us. Whatever means form uses to come near, but that same means waves toss it far from here. So what, again, these lines are, so the waves of the ocean, their purpose is so that whoever is meant to see or meant to be completely wet becomes wet. And whoever is not meant to be part of this, he would be tossed. So he would be kind of rejected from this ocean. That's how this should have been translated. Okay. Until the giver of the truth they know, until the arrows learn who's fired their bow. So he's telling us that this is a process. We go into this ocean, either we get wet or we get rejected. And this process keeps going back and forth until that, finally our heart is opened up to see who is the owner of all this truth. And until now, the other example is the arrow never sees, because the arrow is in the front, never sees who's throwing who's throwing it out. Okay. But in this case, what Rumi is trying to tell us is that finally the arrow is going to see who's been throwing him out all this time. Okay. Does this make sense? Are we on the same wavelength? Am I losing you guys?
No, not at all. I think it's really profound, because to me it says that no matter what, like, you have to dig through layers, you have to get into the sea, and like you have to go deeper, and that's where you find what's worth it.
Awesome. And another thing is, like, you see that this is a process. This goes back and forth. This is not something that just happens. It's something that, you know, it's a process that keeps on, you know, showing up and going, and again it comes and then it goes. So we're not meant, and I'm gonna like strongly say this, because, you know, people sometimes feel like, you know, yeah, we're gonna see things and we see them clearly, and that's just the way it is. But in reality, we're not meant to see the things right away. We're meant to discover things as they come to us. So that's an important, you know, that's the important distinction that we've got to just remember on here. Again, we are scared of submerging into this sea. We just are. And he keeps on telling us that you are on it. This sea, you are on it. So if you have to submerge, just go for it. But most of the time, we're just like too scared to even give into this thing. Okay. All right. Feel free to interrupt me, because this is a heavy section. I'm going to be as diligent, and I'll take my time for it, just because I want to make sure we don't just pass this through. All right. So until the giver of the truth they know, until the arrows learn who's fired the bow. The foolish think the horses have no worth, and force them to race all across the earth. Let's read the next line as well, and this actually makes better sense. Each places little value on his horse. Each places little value on his horse, though rapidly it bears him on the course. So let's read another line. Such that a foolish, simple-minded twit will even ask, has anyone seen it? All right, now it's making sense. Who stole my horse, and where is he now hiding? Dear fellow, what is that on which you're riding? All right, now you guys got the picture. So all of us are riding on a horse. And this horse is supposed to take us to different destinations in order for us to realize what has been manifested in us. Okay. Now, Rumi is trying to tell us that as we're going through this, give me 1 second, please. All right. So Rumi is trying to tell us that as we're going through our lives, this is what it is. There's something that we're riding on. It's taking us somewhere. And basically this horse is kind of referred to something that has limited power. It does have, limited bandwidth, there's limitations associated with it, but it can get us to places. And we get to just, foolishly ride it the way we feel that, hey, this is awesome. This is going to be here forever. And I can just ride this all the way. I mean, some people do that to their bodies. Like, how these days there's a saying that says our bodies are like a shrine. You probably have heard that, right? And they're like, treat your bodies like a shrine, try to eat well, try to, take care of it. And that all makes sense, because it's this horse that is basically telling you things or doing things for you. Your body is affected by a lot of things from within yourself and from outside. You put yourself in front of a TV, there's a lot of rays that keep coming towards you. Those rays do have effects on your body. You get to hear good music, it does have a certain effect on you. And again, that affects the way your body actually feels and acts. Some people,
excuse me, I have a question here.
yes.
I understand a little bit differently. My understanding from what I'm hearing is we do have the horse, but we feel or we think we do not have the horse. So
we're not there
using
yet.
the horse.
So that's the thing.
Okay.
So I hadn't got there yet. You're right. So what happens is that you will eventually kind of take this horse, you get to abuse it a little bit. And then at one point you realize that, hey, this horse actually, I could have used it for a good purpose. And
because
when
initially
you realize that, you're like, where is it? That is where you kind of go like, oh, wait a second, where was this horse all this time? And they're like, well, you're riding on it. You had it all along. It's just you never really understood how you were supposed to use it.
Okay.
So that's what it is. Yeah. Therefore, he's like, wait a second, so basically it is something that when I'm going to say it in Farsi and then I'll translate it in English. There is a poem that says در جوانی پاک بودن شیوه پیغمبری است ورنه هر گبری به پیری می شود پرهیزگار. So the translation is that if you are pure and clean and spiritually in your youth, that is you. That is like being like prophets. Because as anyone who gets old, they actually start thinking about purity and becoming godlike. All of a sudden, there's a certain age. It's so funny, I've seen this. I'm not saying that every. People of age, I have tremendous respect for them, like grandfathers and grandmothers, and all that. I have one myself, or I had one, and all that. But the funny part is that when you hear about their youth, and I'm going to be candid and honest about it, when you hear about their youth, they have done some stuff, and you're like, he didn't look like that when he was a grandpa. Obviously, but yeah, when he was young, apparently he had some serious action going on. So it is an important thing for us to realize that. So it is what we do to ourselves, because eventually you lose that steam, and whether you like it or not, you're gonna have to start going towards God. I know this was not my grandfather. This was somebody who was a relative of us. And towards the end of his life, and may God rest his soul, he was praying all the time. And that was great. But I couldn't understand the purpose of it. Was he making up for things? Did he, it was very much in tune with guilt, that prayer. I could see that in him. And I was like, all right, good for him. But again, it's hopefully, at any point, of course, anybody who actually gets enlightened, that's fantastic. But this also is a lesson for us to actually start enlightening our children and our youth, so that they start getting in touch with their soul, and they start elevating themselves from the early age. So they realize what a gift they have and how wonderful life can be as they grow.
Better late than never, I guess, huh?
I'm
If I-
sorry.
I said better late than never.
Of course, yeah, for sure.
And I want to change it a little bit, at least for myself. It's, obviously, as you said, a lot of those stuff we have done it, or I have done it.
No,
But the key is not really to make up for it or just to regret what happened when we were young. I mean, again, I think I had a great past, even though it was with a lot of sin. But what it is we realize the value or the leisure of being in love with our Creator, the way that we were not there. So it's like a person that you don't know, and now you know more. When you know more, you have more respect and more, you want to do more things for that person just because you know that person more and you love that person more. The same thing for our Creator. For our Creator, when we were young, it was so many other stuff that wouldn't give us time to think about our Creator and know Him more and love Him more. But now we have a lot of time and we go deep in ourselves and discover things that it's like the story here. We had that horse, but we lost it. Now we found it. So it doesn't mean that we want to do the makeup of the past. Right now we have the horse. We had it before, but we thought we don't have it. We thought we lost it, or we never had it actually.
You're right. And again, it's always good, like Rasul said, it's better than never. I'm not, but I wholeheartedly believe this, and this is why I passionately feel about Rumi poetry. If the world could understand this, we would have had a different world. I mean, you have somebody, and by the way, did you guys know Rumi is the best-selling book? I mean, his books are the best-selling book in the US. People are buying this stuff. They eat this stuff up. The problem is that when it comes to application, we're not doing our due diligence to applying this thing. I mean, at the time of this level of consciousness that has created such a demand and such an attraction for this type of, teaching and words, we have got also a very, very divided world. And that's the part that sometimes it hurts. It just does. I mean, and yeah, but we'll see how this goes. All right.
Yeah. Just for but the horse is something that, the horse is something that is a mechanism that we all have implicitly that we may not be aware of.
Yes. Let's put it this way: your knowledge also is your horse. Your knowledge, your degree, your abilities as a doctor or as a banker or as a salesman, or I mean, any ability is also this horse. And we get a choice. We get a choice to how to use it and utilize it. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Is it equal to, I guess we talked a lot that Rumi believes that we have everything within ourselves. Or if you want to find anything, we can find it within ourselves. We don't need it outside. So that mechanism could be that horse that we, when we were looking outside to find the solution for a lot of stuff, because we didn't really discover that the horse is it. We were looking for another horse to solve our problems. Now we go within ourselves and we see the solution, and the answer is within ourselves. We don't need really a lot of proof outside. That horse is within ourselves, that we can go back and find the solution of everything, all the problems.
True. Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the next line. And so he goes a little further into this horse analogy. So it says, who stole my horse and where is he now hiding? Dear fellow, what is that on which you're riding? This is a horse, I know, but where is that one? So that one means like, where is mine? So this is basically referring to us not knowing who we are. I mean, the famous question is like, you know, who am I? Which, you know, philosophers love that question. And some people just, they have written books and talked about it and all that. It is literally this. So yeah, it says, this is a horse, I know, but where is that one? Or where is my horse? Wake up, famed knight. Your brain has been undone. This is a bad translation. What he's saying is this. He's like, you have to wake up and realize that you are the one that's on top of this horse. The fact that you don't see it because you're asleep. And this waking up is when you actually realize consciousness inside yourself. You become conscious. That's why he's using the analogy of you being asleep. When you sleep, you are not conscious. So the soul seems lost, although it's so close by. And bad translation again, your bladder is full, although your lips all dry. Bladder is not the word, it's supposed to be your stomach. Your bladder is full, you gotta go, you gotta go. I mean, it has nothing to do with your lips being dry. You don't keep your what's in your bladder because your lips are dry. So I gotta write this guy an email or something because this is like, he's you know, some of these stuff I truly believe he needs to change it, you know.
Mohsen,
Yes.
my understanding of the whole Masnavi, by the time you finish and you know what you're reading, he's essentially trying to tell you is to know God, you need to know yourself.
Yeah.
And this section is essentially a key to that whole notion.
Yes. 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 And you know what's amazing is this. I mean, we crave knowing ourselves. We do. I mean, people realize that they feel these are symptoms that we have: sadness, happiness, you know, rage, you know, jealousy, everything. All these things are symptoms. They're just symptoms. They're not root causes, because root causes are within us. And I mean, I'm not trying to be dissing our people who are in psychology profession at all. But most of the time, a psychologist is not really helping that person to realize what's within them.
Yeah.
They rather create an addiction into looking for happiness and looking for comfort outside of themselves. Whereas we have to look for comfort within ourselves. That is the key, and that is the distinguished, you know, truth. Because within ourselves, just like what you said, is God. It is God. We talked about this. I mean, Rumi refers to the ayah from Quran. God has blown from his own breath into us. So he is there. We got to find it. Not that we find it, we have to realize it. Okay.
And in order to know, for him to know himself, so I'm making this a statement, I'm hoping that you correct it if it's not correct, because then I have a follow-up to it if what I'm saying is not correct.
Sure.
And in order for him to know himself, in order to know God, he used Shams as a mechanism.
Yes. Shams, and in Farsi class, we have already agreed to this, because I mean, I had problems. And again, this was fine. And Mohsen is, of course, is my trusted friend, so he won't repeat this. I sometimes was very frustrated when like people were like telling me that you're doing a disservice to Shams when you're not talking about him. And I'm like, I can't talk about him because he doesn't exist in the form that you think he exists in these poems. It is not a person, it is a reflection.
Right. And my point for bringing up Shams is that for that exact point, Mohsen and I have a mutual acquaintance that is highly educated. When I'm saying highly educated, that told us the other day that Maulavi is making Shams to be his God.
So I hope he finds his horse. I really hope that he finds his horse.
And I'm not in any position to argue with him because he's highly, he's 50 levels above me.
And you don't have to argue with him. But again, it's interesting. Sometimes we are taken by somebody's credentials. We're going to get to some lines here, which Rumi is not even he has no mercy for people who've got credentials. Have you seen like somebody who actually has a title and it's got all these acronyms next to it?
Alphabet soup.
PhD, MD, CSE, CSI, CIA, I don't know, whatever. He's got everything. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, is this supposed to tell me something about you? Or like, anyways, okay, let's move on. Yeah. So now he's as you guys all now are in tune. So he's telling us we have to find God within ourselves. So now he's got to dive into it. So he goes, how can you see bright colors with your sight when you have not even learned to see the light? Very good question. With colors, you completely lost your mind. Their glare became the veil which made you blind. Interesting. Did you not see when colors fade at night that they are all dependent on the light? So Rumi is about to embark on an interesting concept where he's not talking about colors, because he feels that, of course, our eyesight is something that recognizes colors. Because of the colors that we see, we make even decisions. Anybody who's been in marketing, that colors are the distinguished, choice maker for us sometimes. There is a reason McDonald's has got the golden arches. There is a reason that, a specific cornflakes box has got certain, color on it. So these things all attract us to certain things, right? And it's like, I get that. And he knows that science, by the way, here, because he's telling us that these colors are giving us messages. However, all these colors are emerging from one color. And he's very true, because if you take a crystal and you hold it up against the light, as the light enters the crystal and it breaks, that's where all these different color combinations show up. So the source of all colors, whether we agree to it or not, but we have to agree to it because, again, it's the truth. The source of it comes from colorless light. So it's like you have to find light. Once you find light, you have everything else. That's why what he meant that when you have 10, 1 through 9 is with us as well. But we have to find the source of all these things. So he goes, this is the thing. We see the life through these different colors, and we think that they are the truth, but they're not. Have you guys ever played with a color plate on an application that you've been using? Like when you're trying to highlight something on a Microsoft Word, how there's a highlighter, you can actually highlight text. Just click on it and then go a little deeper, because you can go in. Actually, you know what? I'll do that for you. So in here, I can go into this highlighter, which if I can do this right, I can show the tool, the property bar. So once I actually click on this, hello, there's a property bar, and these are colors that I have, that I can get, but I can go to other colors, and guess what? I have choices. I can do this, which now I can start turning this, and there is many different colors that I can get, or I can do this, which then I can start changing shades of red, green, and blue, which are the three, essential colors, and make colors that way. I mean, do you imagine the color combination that exists in this world all of a sudden? And people who are artists and so forth, I mean, oh my God, I envy them because they understand this, and I don't understand colors. I mean, anybody who's seen my closet, they'll see, and you guys have seen this stuff I wear. They are pretty much neutral colors just because I'm scared of going crazy on anything. So Rumi is trying to tell us all these different variations that exist all come from one source. And he's right, scientifically proven he's right.
And your color choice is definitely 100% based on your personality.
It is.
Yes.
It is. But again, now go back within yourself and you realize that you actually have only one color, which is colorless, by the way.
Yeah.
Light itself has no color. When it's broken, that's when you see all the different combinations.
Well, according to those who've traveled to the outer space, there is no color in outer space. It's all black.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Then that is like that's even that's even worse.
Yeah.
So did you not see when colors fade at night that they are all dependent on the light? So basically now he's trying to give us a version of understanding what colors are. Without light, color disappears from view. The same applies for inner colors too. So without God, if we don't have God within us, let's put it this way. What he's trying to tell us is that if you don't find God within yourself, everything about you is going to be meaningless. While outward light, the sun and stars may shine, the source of inner light is the divine. And that's a beautiful line. So basically saying that the divine light is all within you because it's come from a divine source. Vision's light comes from light inside your heart. This inner light's required for it to start. Your heart's light source is not but God's own light, safe from the reach of sense and reason's blight. So basically, in order to find God, sense and reason is not the right way. Because again, this is a very true statement. If you go completely by your mind, and in this case, I'm talking about the little mind or little brain that we have, what brain tells us is that I have to recognize this thing. If I can't recognize it, it doesn't exist. Right? And of course, if I can't touch it, also it doesn't exist. So there is a sense, I have to have a sense associated with it, either my ear, my eyesight, my my taste, things like that. Vision's light come from light inside your heart. This inner light requires for it to start. So let's see. I want to make sure I actually get this. So the vision's light come from light inside your heart. And we already talked about that. This inner light's required for it to start. The start part, I've got a problem with it. So I'm going to kind of... He's in this case, I don't know what he's trying to say when it comes down to start, But what he's saying that the origin of all the lights is the light that comes from God. And the vision light is something that comes from our heart, because the heart is, again, the GPS that actually shows where we find God. Your heart's light source is not but God's own light, safe from the reach of sense and reason's blight. No colors can be seen at night no colors can be seen at night on light. For light, the darkness is the opposite. Now, what this line is trying to say is this. The reason, remember, he was talking about this world. I mean, Rumi has told us that this world is the world of opposites. So this is also another, duality that tells us what light is and what darkness is. And that's what this line basically is. So in order for you to see colors, you have to know the light. And in order for you to know the light, you have to know the opposite of it, which is the darkness. Because this world, because of our senses, is based on opposites. You must see the light to see the colors too. The opposite of light has proved it true. As God created hardship and distress, so through them you would learn of happiness. Guys, remember this line, memorize this line, recite it every day with yourself. Every time you get angry at somebody or something, say this to yourself.
There is a English version outside of Rumi's for this.
I love this.
It is coming from Rumi.
Raf,
It's not outside. They got it from Rumi.
They got it from Rumi. Rough seas make smooth sailors.
There you go. Yeah.
Lay together.
So as God created hardship and distress, so through them you would learn of happiness.
Yeah,
Hardship is the opposite of happiness. So in order for us to understand happiness, we have to understand hardship. That's why we live. This is the meaning of living, experiencing happiness and experiencing hardship. Truly, these days, we are going through a hardship, all of us. And again, this is basically, as you remember, Rumi says that God sometimes just decides that it has to be this way, because we have to open our hearts and our eyes and see things. And I think this is exactly the time that God has decided that, yeah, we've got to do this. All hidden things by opposites are known. Since he has none, God's hidden on his own. So basically, in this case, he's telling us why God is something that we cannot see. This is the reason. So everything that we get to see has an opposite. That's why we get to see it. But God has no opposites. That's why we can't see it. There you go. So there is a gotcha moment for Rasul. I mean, as simple as that, he proves God. It's brilliant the way he does it. Man can discern all colors once there is light, each as distinct as black skin next to white. You know of light thanks to its opposite. Things show their opposites through lack of it. No opposite for God's light can exist, through which it might be known. This is the gist. So again, he re-emphasizes on this, that yeah, God's light has no opposites. So therefore, that's another thing that, we can't see it. That's why, it just makes sense all of a sudden. Why is it that Rumi tells us in order to know God, you can't trust these 5 senses that you have? Because your senses are bounded by opposites. If there is no opposites, your senses don't operate. It just makes sense. Our eyes can't see him, even with our pleas. Moses' mountains proves to us he sees. Now, he basically now goes into the fact that, our eyes are not able to see it. And this is interesting because, just bear with me because I have to find this thing for you. So, you know the story of Moses when he goes to Mount Sinai. And it was, again, as the story is, Moses asks God that you have to reveal yourself to me. And God has been saying that you can't see me.
Lantarani.
I'm sorry?
Lantarani.
Yeah. And finally, again, God is like, let me reveal myself to, to this mountain. And of course, the mountain just completely just levels. And in book 6, he has an interesting story about Moses' wife, because apparently Moses has had such a glow on his face that anybody who would have seen the glow, he would have gone blind. And Moses' wife, basically, and so Moses had covered his face. Again, this is all Rumi's story. I'm not really going to dispute whether this is truth. There's truth to it in Bible or in the Quran or not. But as he says it, he goes, he had to cover his face so that people would not go blind. His wife comes, closes one eye, and he unveils Moses' face, and of course the eye goes blind. So once the eye goes blind, he actually starts looking with the other one, and of course the other eye goes blind as well, because the eye could not tolerate the light that was emitting from Moses's face. And somebody went and told him that, oh my God, your eyes were so pretty, now you all went blind, and I feel sorry for you. And Moses' wife responds back that I wish I had 100,000 eyes, that I could actually see the light again that I saw, and I would have given all again and trade them for blindness, because I got to see the true light. So it is an interesting story that Rumi refers to it quite a bit in Masnavi, because it shows the greatness of the Almighty, and also the limited ability and limited strength that we possess. So our eyes can't see him, even with our pleas. Moses' mountain proves to us he sees. Like lions from thought's jungle, forms have come. In this way, thoughts where speech and sound came from. So let me give my own translation of this. It's much easier. He's like, if there's a difference between the face and the meaning, it's as if you're talking about the lion that is in a dungeon, or you hear about the lion in the dungeon. So there is the difference between the face and the meaning behind it. Okay. Again, this was a bad translation. Now, through speech and sound have thus emerged from thought, you have no clue where that sea should be sought. He then switches to the speech and sound, or words and thoughts. That's what the real translation should have been. So the words and thoughts that he is basically telling us about. Okay, so he's saying that those speech and sound have thus emerged from thoughts. So what we think and what we whatever we think, okay, manifests itself in our speech, right? So for instance, I'm looking at Mateen, and in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I wish I was at that beach that he's at right now. Now, unless I say that with my mind, with my breath and words, that my thought doesn't manifest itself. You guys don't know what I'm thinking. I could think this and I could totally pass through it, right? But the way it manifests is when I actually bring it into my words. All right. So he's telling us that this life as a whole, okay, emerges from our thoughts and our minds. Isn't that interesting? So our thoughts are manifesting itself in the way we talk, right? And then what he's saying is that what we're blind to is that we don't know where our thoughts are connected to. Now, however, the next line, he says, but since you have seen the wave of speech is fine, you know its source, that sea must be divine. So when you listen to somebody like David Duke, who is the leader of KKK, as he tells you his thoughts manifesting through his words, you know that the sea that he is connected to is the sea of segregation, sea of discrimination, sea of
hatred,
belittling others. So in here is like, once, you know, but since you have seen the wave of speech, so if you actually start realizing, and the wave of speech is something that is harmonious with the wave of God within you, if there is no collision with the wave that exists within yourself, then you know you are seeing the fine wave. Isn't that interesting? The way he's translating all this stuff. I mean, the way he's telling us all this. So, but since you've seen the wave of speech is fine, you know its source, that sea must be divine. So then you're like, oh, so you guys are all reading Rumi poetry right now. Mm-hmm. And all of you are like, oh, this sounds harmonious with my thoughts. This gives me a harmony energy. This is not something that rattles me around. This actually calms me down. This gives me a sense of, realizing the spirit of God within me. Because the waves of these words are in harmony with your own waves. So then, hold on, because there is these 2-3 lines are really, really important. So it's like, from knowledge, when there first arose thoughts wave, through his speech that a form to you it gave. So it's like, what you see in form is something that has emerged from formless, and it has started from your thoughts. So what you see as manifested thought, I mean, what you actually see is a manifested thought. This glass or this tumbler or whatever the hell they call it, somebody thought this through first, right? Mm-hmm. Then he manifested it by drawing it somewhere. then eventually decided that there is a specific material that he has to use and a specific color, and eventually it manifested. But origination of it was in his thoughts. So anything that we see in form has come from a formless beginning in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, be very, very careful and please pay attention to these lines. This form was born of speech, then died again. The waves drew back. The waves drew back like cattle to their pen. So in this case, is like, hey, every time a word shows up, these words manifest, show themselves, and then they go away. Another form comes through, and another one, and another one. Think about your own life. Think about the things that you have imagined and dreamed of, and think about the ones that have manifested themselves. And then once they manifested, think about the next thing that you imagined after that. Because that what it manifested went away again. You were done with that. You manifested something different. Think about your first apartment and think about the house that you're living in right now. I mean, think through that, because it is your thoughts that have manifested themselves, and then they went away, and then again they manifest themselves. So every face or every form has come from formless, and again it goes away. And every time it goes away, that's like a wave that comes through, shows itself, and then goes back to the sea. That's the analogy that Rumi is using. So then he goes, from formless comes form originally, and we return to him continually. Return to him is the ayah that's in the Quran, which says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We are from God and we return back to God. The Farsi line is, Surat az bi surati amad burun, baz shod kenna ilayhi raji'un. So everything that we've seen in form has come from a formless. And then again, it goes back to the formless. Wayne Dyer has an excellent analogy. Those of you guys who have read or seen him on, let's say, have seen him and have seen his videos. He's got this thing. He's like, we come from nowhere. We're now here, and we're going to go back to nowhere. And the funny part is, nowhere, now here, nowhere, you only move a W from one word to another. Think about that. And that's exactly this line. We come from there and we go back to it. Same ayah in the Quran as well. So the next line is also very, very interesting. And I'm going to read it, but I think we're not going to finish this. It's just not going to finish tonight. Sorry, it's already, and this is going to take us a while. So it says, each moment you must die and then return. The world is but a moment. You'll soon learn. And that's not the right translation, by the way, because the Farsi one, it says that every instance, yes, you die and you emerge, and you go and you come back. And that's and Prophet Muhammad has said that the world is only 1 hour. That is actually a hadith from Prophet Muhammad, that the world is 1 hour. Which next time I want to talk about this, that what does it mean that we die and we come back at every instance, at every moment? We die and we come back. What does that mean?
Bring that poem with you when you come. Har nafasi ke mikeshim
That's from Saadi, yes.
That's from Saadi. Yeah, I don't remember it, but that's the one for this.
Every breath
نفسی که
that we
فرود آید مومد حیات است و چون برمی نشیند مفرح زاد.
That's
the one.
That's correct.
از در هر نفسی دو نعمتی وجود و هر نعمتی وجود.
So the English translation is like, so Saadi has said that every breath that we take in, it gives us life, and then we breathe it out, it actually elevates our life. So in every breath, then there is two thanks, or two, we have to thank twice every time we actually take a breath in and out, because there is a life in it every single time. Now, I want you guys to also think about this. When we started tonight, it was 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock on October 21st, 7 p.m. Pacific time is not going to repeat itself. You guys cannot recreate that anymore. In other words, 7 o'clock p.m. October 21st
Is dead.
Dead. This is a very, very important concept to realize and understand and live by. If you can live by this, this actually frees you up. Yeah, these next few lines are so... I'm sorry. Yeah, we're out of time. Because it's kind of like really... So you guys have to show up next week. No excuses, because yeah, we've got like 5-6 lines which are like amazingly important on top of what we have just already talked about.
How about tomorrow? Can we start at 7:30?
Tomorrow, I'm still contemplating to whether we're going to have the Farsi class or not. And
Okay.
Of course, there is a
Debate. Yes, debate is 6 to 7:30.
Oh, so that means that you're going to be all in and out yourself?
I mean, again, you know.
Yeah, you're going to be in and out.
Depending how he behaves.
You can record it, Mohsen, and just bypass when the Trump comes, fast forward it.
Yeah.
You can listen to the whole thing in 20 minutes.
So any questions, guys? Anything that we just said? So, I mean, Sunny and Aziza, you were very quiet. Of course, Aziza gave us a reaffirmation that this is all, she's following it, and I'm going to believe that.
It was good actually today.
I learned a lot today.
Makes you think.
Great. That's great. So Mahdi, I don't know if you're still following or you're with us or you're cooking. But again, these lines are fairly important. Again, it's because it actually, I think it sits at the center of every single self-help book that you see in the market. Every single book that tells you live in the now comes from these lines. Every single book that tells you you have to know yourself before you actually can love somebody else comes from these lines. Every single book that questions your decision making and how you view the world comes from these lines. I mean, these lines are so important. So again, I can't emphasize it more than enough. And by the way, we already proved God. That's another thing.
You did. That was awesome.
Yeah. So, okie doke.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening, everybody.
Have a
Bye.
good night.
All right. Have a good night. See you next
Bye.
week.
See you.